Thank you. So, Fangirl. I don't know if you know this about me, but I am a fangirl of a lot of things. I may or may not have written a novella-sized fanfiction about Mass Effect. No, I did. I wrote that. So, I saw this book at the library and I was like, well, this is probably going to be interesting, but ultimately probably sort of lame. I was so wrong, and I'm so happy about that. Okay, let's read the back of this thing before I get too carried away here. Kath is a Simon Snow fan. Okay, the whole world is a Simon Snow fan, but for Kath, being a fan is her life, and she's really good at it. She and her twin sister Ren ensconced themselves in the Simon Snow series when they were just kids. It's what got them through their mother leaving. Reading, rereading, hanging out in Simon Snow forums, writing Simon Snow fanfiction, dressing up like the characters for every movie premiere. Kath's sister has mostly grown away from the fandom, but Kath can't let go. She doesn't want to. Now that she's going to college, Ren has told Kath she doesn't want to be roommates. Kath is on her own and completely outside her comfort zone. She's got a surly roommate with a charming, always-around boyfriend, a fiction-writing professor who thinks fanfiction is the end of the civilized world, a handsome classmate who only wants to talk about words, and she can't stop worrying about her dad, who's loving and fragile and never really been home alone. For Kath, the question is, can she do this? Can she make it without Ren holding her hand? Is she ready to start living her own life? And does she even want to move on if it means leaving Simon Snow behind? It's a long back of a book, and for the most part it sums everything up quite well. But let's talk about this. I'm going to try to be rational, because this book has an audience, and that audience is me, and it might be you. This book is best. Now, I think a lot of other people could read it, but this book is best for introverted, often shy, writing-loving fangirls. It's for me. The main character was so much like me in my teenage years that I spent most of the book just nodding and saying yes. I'd just be like, read, 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 yes. Read, 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 that. This girl was me. She's an introvert, and she also has social anxiety, which are not the same thing. I am both of those things as well. She loves to write, and often writes obsessively, especially as a teenager. And she is really in love with a certain fandom, and it is uncanny how similar to me that she is. She's weepier than me, though. She cries a lot. I don't really cry, like, ever. But other than that, she is me. So I'm slightly worried that my love of this book is colored by how deeply I resonate with the main character. I have literally never resonated with the main character as deeply as I do with Kath in this book. Wow. But I'm going to try to be objective, and you know that my heart is a cold little lump of hate, so I'm sure I will be able to find things that I didn't like about this book too. But let's just start. I will warn you that there are going to be some minor spoilers. I'll try to keep it from being major, but in reality, the spoilers I'm going to give you, I'm hoping will only encourage you to read the book. So this book covers something that I find really interesting, and that is being nerdy while female. A lot of times in books, the nerdy while female character is either A manic pixie dream girl who comes along and likes all the things that the nerdy male main character likes, or helps him even grow in his nerddom because she likes more of those things. Then there is the nerdy female main character who just really just has to learn how to get out there and enjoy parties and boys, because she was wrong to be introverted and nerdy. This book is so refreshing because it says that you can live as an introverted, nerdy woman, and there is nothing wrong with you. That is such a refreshing message that we just never get. It's okay to be nerdy and male, but it's not okay to be nerdy and female. It means that there's something wrong with you and you need to get out there and you need to change and you need to discover boys and parties and socialization. Socialization. It sounds like you're a dog or something. So this book, it breaks almost all of the young adult cliche molds, and I love it for that. I want to kiss this book. I'm probably going to add it to my bookshelf, which is, as you can see, is fairly selective. I don't generally own books that I don't love. There are some books that I don't love on here that were given to me as gifts, but what are you gonna do? The main character writes fan fiction for their world's version of Harry Potter, although Harry Potter does exist in their world, but it doesn't seem to be as popular, because what she writes for is Simon Snow, which is very, very thinly veiled, obviously Harry Potter, and she writes slash fiction for the Harry and Draco characters. And right now, she is writing a novel-length story for these two characters, because the final book in their Harry Potter series hasn't come out yet, and she has taken it upon herself to write it, except also the two male characters are in love. So throughout the book, instead of chapter headings, there are small selections from either the real Simon Snow books or from her various fan fictions, and they always have some little way to tie in to the story or the chapter that's going to happen, and it was very clever. I really like that. This book definitely delves into the realm of, is fan fiction okay and is it a real art form? Kath does go to a fiction writing class where she, for the most part, she writes original fiction, but at one point she submits a fan fiction not understanding that that is wrong, and she gets in trouble for it. And she has an argument with her teacher, which no one exactly wins, which I like. I love the discussion of fan fiction as true writing and true art, which I believe it definitely is, and this book covers it while leaving it a little bit open for you to make your own interpretation about it. This book does not hold your hand as far as nerddom goes. It throws, you know, slang terms at you like fanfic, shipper, slash fiction, and it doesn't stop to explain those to you. It's just like, keep up. Then there is Kath's romantic interest, and I am gonna spoil this here. It's pretty obvious, I feel, from the beginning who she's going to end up with. There is a little bit of a love triangle, but it's not as hardcore as love triangles usually are. So I am going to spoil this little bit here. Sorry about that. But she ends up with a boy who is he is the antithesis of Edward Cullen. He is the boy that girls should be going after. He is kind. He is respectful. When she says she doesn't want to have sex right away, he says, I will go as far as you want to go and no further. Oh my gosh. But he is independent. He doesn't rely on her. He goes out, he hangs out with his other friends all the time, and she wants him to. It is just, why do we fantasize about Edward Cullen when we could have a guy like this, and this should be the boy that we want our young women to go after? Let's talk a little bit about introverts and social anxiety. I am an introvert and I have social anxiety, from moderate social anxiety. It used to be a lot worse. I've figured out a lot of coping mechanisms as I've grown. And seeing Kath as younger, you know, she's a lot younger than me. She's 18. She's almost 10 years younger. She is 10 years younger than me. How frightening is that? Now you know how old I am. Holy crap. And so I see a lot of my younger self in her because she has not learned all of those coping mechanisms yet. How do you cope with a crowd? How do you cope with having to go somewhere you've never been and not knowing what to do when you get there? And it's great. It's almost like a guide for people who don't know about their introverted friend. If you want to know that and you want to know about your friend who's introverted and has some social anxiety, read this book. For a long time, she lives off of protein bars because she didn't go to the cafeteria right away, and now she feels like she can't go, ever. Until her roommate, who is an extrovert, says, "Come on, you are not living off of protein bars, we are getting food." And I would highly recommend, if you are an introvert, that you get an extroverted friend, because that can be a great coping mechanism right there. Also, her boyfriend is an extrovert. My husband is an extrovert. Kath never learns the lesson that you so often see in all of these books. She never learns the lesson of, you're an introvert and you don't want to go out to parties. Well, if you just go out to one party, you will find out how awesome it is and you will love it and you will never want to stay home and writing again. But no, throughout the book, she is invited to many parties and she pretty much consistently says, no, I would rather stay home and write. And this book makes it clear that there is nothing wrong with that. I want to make that clear to all the introverts out there. If you would rather stay home than go to a party, there is nothing wrong with you. I'm going off on a tangent, again, because I relate so deeply to this book. I love that this book does not follow most of the YA cliches that you expect coming. It is a slice of life story, so if you don't like slice of life, you might not like this one. However, if you are a nerdy introvert like me, you will probably like this one. Even if it is slice of life and you usually read fantasy, give this a try. You will relate. But it does not follow most of the cliches. Like I said, she never learns that partying and being social is actually what she was missing all along, and now her life is so much better because of that. There is, with her mother, a lot of YA slice of life stories involve a divorce or an estranged parent. And consistently, in the ones that I have read, eventually the child will come to an understanding about that parent and realize that, oh, that parent had to leave me because reasons, or they're very sorry now. And in this one, Kath's mother left her and her sister when they were 8 years old and did not communicate with them until this point. And she wants back in their lives. And Kath does not want that and says that is not okay. And the book does not have that same old boring lesson of, well, you just need to relate to your mother and understand why she abandoned you. This book says sometimes mothers are bad people too. This woman just cannot deal. She cannot deal with the stress of being a mom. And later in the book, it's proven that she still cannot deal. She has not changed. And that is so refreshing to have that as the message, that sometimes there are toxic people in your life. Sometimes those toxic people are even your parent. And if they leave you, maybe it's better that they stay gone. This book is also great because it covers mental illness. I hate calling it mental illness, but that's, I guess, what we'll kind of have to call it. I'm sorry, I don't want to insult anybody. Anyway, mental illness and living with it and not stigmatizing it are definitely a theme in this book. Their father is very bipolar and he has a lot of manic phases, and he has done himself harm in these phases, and his daughters have had to take care of him. When they go away to college, it becomes a lot harder for him. But the book never tells you that he needs to, he's on medication sometimes too, but it never tells you that that is going to fix him or that he needs to be fixed. They tell you that if you have a problem like this, or like social anxiety, that there's nothing wrong with you. You need to find life coping mechanisms to deal with it and live your life. And that is what this book encourages, and I love that. This book also covers love in all forms, both romantic love and familial love. And the family love is the one that I really enjoy the most, because the father and his bipolar disorder, he does not like to, take help from other people, but it's so obvious that his daughters take care of him and they keep an eye on him, and he knows that. And it's obvious that he loves them so much that he will allow them to take care of him. Familial love is so strong of a message in this story, and it is just great. The character growth in this story is also much more believable. So often in a story like this, the character will start out here and end up way over here at the end of the book. And at the end of this book, she ends up like maybe here. There's an arc, but it's not huge. She learns things. She definitely learns things. And she definitely grows. She finds out more coping mechanisms to deal with her social anxiety. And she also has to learn about the choice of writing fan fiction and the choice of writing regular fiction and what she wants to do with her life and the choice that she makes. And I'm not going to spoil that for you. But again, it's not always what you expect it to be. This book really defies cliches, and I love that. So, I'm sure you can guess, there are a few nitpicks that I have about this book. You know how I said at the beginning of each chapter, rather than a chapter title, there would be a selection from a fan fiction or from the real story of Simon Snow. Also in this book, she reads one of her fan fictions to her love interest. And she reads the whole thing, and we as the audience get to read it. And I felt like that didn't need to be included. It bogged the story down. It felt like it was filler. You know how I feel about filler. It felt unnecessary. Like when you could just hit some highlights of it, it wasn't necessary to have the full fan fiction in there. It almost felt like I'm going to talk about the author in a little bit, but it almost felt like it might have been a fan fiction that the author herself wrote and just changed a few names around and threw it in to her book. I think this book dates itself in that it uses a lot of slang and also mentions a lot of social media that we use now, but we won't use obviously in the future because the world is always changing and the world of, the internet is always changing. And I feel like this book is going to be like a flashbang. It's great right now, and I would totally suggest reading it right now. But in 20 years, is it going to be as strong as it is right now? Probably not. However, that might not be a flaw because right now it is such a strong book and you need to read it. The audience feels kind of limited, but I don't think that's a huge problem. I feel like we need more books like this. Not very long ago, this book would not have been published because of its audience. Because up until very recently, I don't think people believed that that audience existed, or that if it did exist, it was in such a limited way that this book would not be popular, no one would buy it. So I am thankful for the culture that we are in right now that allowed this book to be here for us to enjoy, and you should definitely go enjoy it. I wanted to talk a little bit about the author, Rainbow Rowell, which I don't even know if that's actually her real name. The little bit of research I did on the internet did not turn up much. Like, I went to her website and I went to her Wikipedia, and neither of those things told me very much about her, except for the books that she has written. I feel like, in this book anyway, I feel like she has definitely had experience as a fan fiction writer. She has definitely had experience as an introverted, nerdy girl. Presumably always been a girl. But I have no proof of that. I have nothing saying for sure, yes, she wrote this Harry Potter / fan fiction. And here you can read it. But she also wrote very popular Eleanor and Park, which I have not read. And I'm slightly interested in reading now because I loved this book so much. And she is definitely a nerd fighter. There is definitely evidence of that going on. For all I know, she's friends with John Green. I don't know, but she should be. So, if you are a nerd fighter, and if you have ovaries, you should definitely read this book. And if you are a nerd fighter and don't have ovaries, you still might want to read it because it's going to help you understand the mysterious creature known as female nerd.
Okay, so I thought of a few more things to bring up about Fangirl, and I also thought I would test out a mic that I'm borrowing from a friend of mine, so we're gonna do both at the same time. I felt kind of bad that I didn't have as many negatives about Fangirl, and you know how I like to tear things apart, so I came up with a few. Definitely a big point in this book could be that the title doesn't really fit it. Yeah, she's a fangirl of their world's version of Harry Potter, but the only part of the fandom that you really get to see is the fan fiction, and you barely get to see that. You don't see her reading anyone else's fic, and you really only touch on her fiction and how popular it is. You don't see any other of the really great parts of being part of a fandom, like going to conventions, chatting online with other fans, and that sort of thing. Like I said, the only part that really makes her a fan seems to be that she writes the fan fiction. I feel like the title of this book is a little bit misleading. It should be called How to Survive Being an Introvert? Something like that. The other thing that struck me as a little bit unrealistic is when she goes into this writing class. She takes a fiction writing class, and it's not even supposed to be for first years. It's a advanced class, and she takes it and she's super good at it. And the only type of writing that she's done is fan fiction. Now, I'm not dissing on fan fiction. Fan fiction is a really great way to practice your writing, but I can tell you right now that if you haven't got a lot of writing experience and this is your first time going into like a quote-unquote professional writing sphere, you are not going to be the best in the class at it. It's just not going to happen. And even at the end of the story, she doesn't really grow in skill so much as she grows in comfort level. And that annoyed me just a little bit because I know how challenging it is. I write both, and I know how challenging it is to write regular fiction and to write fan fiction, and they are different from each other. So it is kind of surprising that she is so freakishly good at everything writing, all things writing, that she tries. The only other thing I can remember is that this author is really obsessed with lips. She describes lips, like, a lot, in weird ways, and mouths, and I'm just like, why do you care so much about lips and mouths? Guess I know what your favorite part of people is. I like eyes, so I probably overdescribe eyes, too. It's not really. That's just a nitpick.
Alright, guys. Well, if you're ever bored, you know what you can go read. Fanfiction! I think I'm gonna go write some.